All right, welcome into another edition of Catching Up with the Cats. I'm Justin Parker. Catching Up with the Cats is always brought to you by Atrium Health. Today's guest is junior Tommy Cromie of the men's swimming and diving team. Tommy, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, Justin. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you, and part of the reason we have you is not necessarily tied to your athletic endeavors, but you're co-chair of Davidson Vote. So not only are you a scholar athlete here at Davidson, but you're very active in another part of campus. I'm guessing as the clock ticks toward election day, you've been quite busy.
It's been crazy, with early voting in North Carolina being such a big deal this year. We've been running around the clock trying to get students turned out to vote. We got 7 days left and only a few more days of early voting, so we're coming down to the wire.
So what I'm guessing in a presidential election year, things just get amped up a lot, right?
hmm Yeah, so we, in a normal year, we'll just do some registration and we'll do some education about like the local issues or maybe a House or a Senate race that's happening. But in the presidential election year, student enthusiasm is way up than I've seen it in my 3 years here. Normally we'll register between, 50 and 100 students in our time, but this year, we got up over 300 students of the 1,800 students we have on campus. So registered or requesting an absentee ballot. So enthusiasm is way up and things are definitely different this year.
What's the response been maybe from those in athletics, scholar athletes? I know a lot of teams are, they've had the graphics 100% of the eligible voters are registered to vote. I'm guessing that's rewarding for you kind of in both roles as well.
It's been amazing that, we started this summer with, I started talking to athletic director Clooney, and then he brought in Coach Cook in the athletic department, and then Coach Kewick from the basketball team and Coach Decker from the football team all hopped in and really wanted to get involved with this. So within the athletic department, we really focused on trying to get as many teams to 100% as possible. And we got to 13, which is a really big deal. And to get those 13, we had 20 student athletes get trained in how to do voter registration. So they were helping us do voter registration at the lift tent. So top to bottom across a lot of teams, there was a lot of enthusiasm registering, but also helping other student athletes register to vote as well.
Good stuff. And you're obviously very passionate about this. Where did that start for you?
So a lot of it started in high school. After, the 2016 election, I was actually in a government course at the time, and we focused a lot on this kind of stuff. And I ended up campaigning or interning for a congressional campaign the summer after my senior year, right before I joined here at Davidson. And that really got me into it. I talked to a lot of voters. I was making like 200 calls a day all summer to voters and just having these conversations with real people who had real issues, whose ideas may not fit in what you would consider the punditry of cable television news or what you'd hear on TV. These people had real issues, and the government could fix these problems or adapt to help people fix these problems. So those were the kinds of issues that I saw on the campaign. And then when I got here to Davidson, the North Carolina House and State Senate was trying to pass a voter ID law that was really getting ready to disenfranchise a lot of young voters who don't really have state IDs. As a New Jersey resident, I do not have a North Carolina driver's license. So the voter ID law could really disenfranchise me. And there was a big scramble after that for the college. The college did a lot of great work to try and get our voter ID passed. But unfortunately, in the first timeline, they only gave us 3 months, which was not able to be met. And luckily that this timeline was extended and the CAT card was eventually approved, but now the court has denied the need for a voter ID in this election, which is great for students. It just adds an extra hurdle for students to vote. So that is really why I got involved, because voting is so important, and youth voters in North Carolina can have the second most impact of youth voters in any state in the country for the presidential election, according to a Tufts University study, and the fourth highest impact of youth voters of any state in the country in the Senate election. So young voters can really have an impact here in North Carolina, and it's important that we are all able to vote and are registered and know what we're voting on.
That's great stuff. And voting is one of those things where there's a temptation to think, well, my vote doesn't really count. I'm just one person. But the flip side of that is, well, if everybody thought that, then we'd never get anywhere with anything. What would your message be to those who are still maybe on the fence about, I don't know, it's just one vote. I don't know if I really want to get out there.
So, Dr. Ibram Kendi gave the Reynolds Lecture a couple weeks ago. A great anti-racist scholar who Davidson was really lucky to get to come to campus and give a lecture. And he was asked a question similar to this, and he responded by saying that voting is power, and to not vote is to give up your power and give it to someone who has, the opposite beliefs and opposite needs that you do from the government. So giving up your vote and not voting is to give up your power to someone who doesn't feel the same way you do. And, college students, political science research has shown that college students won't vote because, they may not feel 100% on what they're voting on, or may not feel the most educated on it. But here at Davidson, like, everything we do shows that these students are educated. Enthusiasm this year is incredibly high. These students have watched the news. They hear about it in their conversations at Commons or in their classes or around campus. Everyone knows what's going on, and they have feelings about how they should vote or why they should vote. And to not vote is really to give up your power.
Now, you're a political science major, which fits with all this, right?
Mhm.
What do you envision for yourself maybe down the road?
So down the road, I would love to work in public policy. I really think, as much as campaigns are great, I think public policy is really the way forward to create this inclusive and empathetic public policy. Because so much of the policy we see, especially in the voter ID law in North Carolina, it was really carving out the section of who these politicians wanted to vote. And the people in power saw that, college students may not be voting in their direction. So, and minority groups who may not have access to IDs as well, these groups won't really vote in their direction. So they decide to carve out who they want to vote in their elections for them. So I think I would love to work in public policy as a legislative staff member to, some politician who can work to shape policies in a way that includes everyone and values everyone's existence.
Well, how about in the swimming pool? You swim the butterfly, you swim the IM for John Young's Davidson team, and what about just getting back to practice this year? And I know there was a long time between practice sessions as a team from the end of last year till just recently. What's it been like on the athletic front for you?
So the gap in how in the practice was incredible. Normally we take 3 weeks after conference off in the spring. So conference is right in the middle end of February. Our 3 weeks happened to actually be the end of our third week was when we got sent home in the spring. So none of us actually ever got back in the pool in the spring. And then with shutdowns and everything else, I ended up being out of the pool for 21 or 22 weeks, which is the longest I've ever been out of the pool in my life. So it's really been a different year in terms of getting back into things. I was lucky enough to be on campus over the summer working with Coach Jamie a lot, working on lifts and strength and conditioning before we were able to get back in the pool because of our COVID precautions and guidelines. So I was able to get back in the pool towards the end of July. And with that, each practice, we're just working to prepare. With no meets this year, it's a very different season. We're working towards a conference meet that's still scheduled for February. So all of our eyes are on one meet. In a normal year, you go from week to week and you'll have a dual meet every weekend or two just to see where you're at and get up and racing. But that's something that we don't have this year. We were supposed to be having a couple meets now. We were supposed to have a couple meets in September with a big meet. Normally we're up at Bucknell in November or December, which we will rest a little for and throw on a suit. And again, that's gone. So this year it's all about, putting all the effort for practice for conference. And it's all about preparation, something that we haven't gotten before. So it'll be a test, but we're all looking forward to it. We've been grinding in the pool. Coach John and Coach Sarah have been really working us hard. And we've also paid a bit more attention to details this year that we may not have the time to otherwise because, weekends we'll be traveling to another school for a meet or something like that. So I've put a lot more work in on, underwaters with Coach John and the dive well. So with our pool, we're lucky enough to have an extended pool past 25 yards. So we have a dive well, but because the divers aren't always using the dive well, Coach John has been putting us in the dive well and just working on our underwaters, which can really be a game changer in a race. So I've been lucky enough to have the time to prepare and work on those underwaters this fall.
Well, Tommy, you're a busy guy. You have a lot going on. It's very impressive, all of it, how you balance everything. And good luck on this final push toward election day, and then maybe take a breath a little bit and get ready for the end of the semester, which will be coming pretty soon after that.
It really will be. It'll be a race, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you, Justin.